Hi, my name is Stefan Kazakis and I'm a business owner. And I guess having been in business for over 30 years now, it's interesting to understand what it is that as a business owner I've always wanted, in fairness, what I've always needed. And in the journey, the challenge of not having enough, not having enough money, I guess not having the appropriate team, understanding that there were times when, serving clients that the only reason I was doing it was to just make sure I paid the rent and make ends meet versus, the true satisfaction of delivering a service or product to a client that really acknowledge and be grateful for what it is that we did over and beyond. Being in business from a perspective of there's not enough hours in the day, where you're constantly being challenged with, I'm just running out of time to do the important stuff. What are the important stuff? What is it that is where my focus and my time and my energy needs to be put into versus just being on that treadmill or just being busy and urgent? Having been in business for such a long time and ultimately understanding the challenges of, until I had to sort of put a bit of a handbrake as to, hang on, can I focus at least 1 hour a day on the important stuff? And when I decided to do that, it would definitely be done later in the day when I was running out of all the energy. And when I realised doing it early in the morning would be a better alternative, it sort of got in the way of going to the gym and keeping healthy. And so the continual aspect of where am I and what do I need to do, and seeking that point of clarity, for which gets in the way of so many business owners, and ultimately that leads to being exhausted and ultimately just losing confidence in the things that you need to be working on, and having that pathos, the ethos of, I'm going to do this, I believe I can, just like the first day when you started your business. How exciting was that day? And ultimately, how exciting was it to not have all the answers, but you were okay with that. But then a year, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, and in some cases, the idea that's not even a business yet, it's a year, 2 years, 3 years down the track, and you're still struggling to figure out where, what, and how is my first move. So whether you're a business owner with a business that's already going in a certain direction and maybe not where you want it to be, it's a crossroad, right? It's not broken, but it's a crossroad. The passion is not there no more. Or it's an idea that you want to make it and turn it into a business that gives you that freedom of, being in control of your own destiny, growing something that you have the confidence and I guess at some point being at a stage where you say, yes, that's my baby, that's my business. Growing a team, the challenges that come with that. The challenge of just having the emotional, ups and downs of things that needed to happen that didn't happen. The things that should have happened that didn't happen. And ultimately, the things that the economy and things that you can't control occur. It's such a challenging space, this space called business and business ownership. Many of us get into business. I remember the early days of business for me. Got into business and it was really a job. There was nothing more, nothing less. There was nothing really sexy about being in business in the early years other than I just had determination and I had a lot of resilience. And sometimes people say that's what you're born with, but I'm a true believer that yes, there is a DNA element of that, but it's also a dial that we can control. And I think the more confidence we have about where we're going and what is it important at each milestone stage that we need to be trending towards, not exactly achieving, but just trending towards. I think as we have our finger on that dial, which is called the confidence dial, which is totally started by just being more clear. What are the fundamental? What are the basics? What are the 1, 2, 3 things, activities, tasks, things that you're going to be doing differently that you ultimately want to be sort of moving in the right direction and then trending, am I or aren't I? These are what I've got to know over many, many years in multiple businesses and having, been in a privileged position to grow some broken businesses and also some ideas that became businesses, and also in my later stage, buy businesses, build them and sell them. I just get to understand the more confidence I have and the more simple I keep it, and the more I have an opportunity to communicate and ultimately influence great systems followed by good people that become great people. where heart and mind needs to be on the agenda versus arms and legs. How do we become more effective versus more efficient? These are the aspects that just keep a business moving in the right direction. Are there going to be some failures and or learnings? Absolutely. Are there going to be relationships that, for whatever the reason may be, will be blindsiding you with I want to get a divorce with you, as in customers that you never really wanted to lose, suppliers that just didn't pull their weight and you had to lose? You know, the challenges of relationships in business and the ups and downs of that. I guess being exhausted, that whole time challenge of where do I go first and how do I fit what I need to fit into a decent day in the space of, let's say, 10 hours. You know, at some point you move more and more towards the 8 and 6 and 4 and most effective hours, that is. But in the early stages of business or starting to commence a real business, managing that time and being really clear and accountable to that time, for which what I recommend and what I've learned over many journeys is transparency. Be clear about what it is that you need to be doing. Be also very clear as to how it turns up being something that represents success or trending forward. So if you've got transparency around that, which equals clarity, and you have accountability, which equals trending, ultimately all you need to be doing every 90, 180 days is continuously just reviewing and revising the plan and confirming on a weekly basis, am I or aren't I on track for that? So I guess a little bit about my story. So I grew up in a family business. You know, mum and dad were migrants from Southern Europe in the 1960s, and they migrated to a beautiful place in Australia called Melbourne. And for any of you that may understand where Melbourne is, it's a long way away from Southern Europe in the 1960s, where it took them 40 days with no idea as to where they were going other than the quest for a better life. You know, that proverbial suitcase with nothing in it, and they arrived here, and you know, mum and dad, they were in their, mum was 19 and Dad was 20, and they eventually got married 12 months later. And you know, by the age of 21, I was you know, the firstborn son to my father, and I guess they commenced what was back then only one version of life, and that was just work harder. And there's no disrespect for that, and there's great admiration for thousands of people in that situation back then, as there are people in today's world trying to do the same. So they commenced the business in textile manufacturing in the early 1970s, and by the late 1980s they were financially retired. So here is a migrant, a couple that travelled 40 days and had no idea, they had no language, they had no concept of where they were going other than, we just want a better life. It took them 20 odd years on the back of just working harder to build this amazing business. And a business that they only knew one way to keep on growing, and that was just to work harder and work harder. And as much as working harder is an element of success, you realise as you grow in business, it's not the only thing that needs to be the strategy or the tactical approach. So growing up in a family environment where there was a lot provided to us, what wasn't really provided was mum and dad weren't there in critical moments of growing up. So we would constantly be having dinner on the dinner table at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, and sometimes we would be in bed and we wouldn't see mum and dad for days in a row. But I guess they just knew one thing, and they just needed to work harder for a better life, and they knew nothing else. So I can't blame them for that. But I grew up in an environment where mum and dad were not there when we had some milestone situations, whether it was school, whether it was sport. I grew up sort of being in the back seat of my best friend's parents' car, driving to whether it was martial arts or soccer training, and sometimes even to school. And it sort of influenced, I guess, a mindset in me in growing up where I actually hated that business. I hated that business, and I blamed that business for getting in the way of, you know, just mum and dad not being there. Admittedly, it gave us plenty of stuff, plenty of great life, but the most important things for what I, as a growing child at that stage of my life, it didn't give us. And that was that whole, the nurturing of a family that, was there at the most important time. So I graduated through high school, and I was fortunate enough to get to a university and did a Bachelor of Social Sciences, and with a major in commerce and law. In saying that, I guess the fact that I'd passed my year 12 exams and was granted an opportunity to go to university and have a tertiary education, Mum and Dad saw that as the ultimate prize, and I guess they were so proud that in 1986 I was given a brand new BMW coupe for my 18th birthday as a prize and a reward, and it was more about pride and esteem, I guess, for Mum and Dad having, I guess, a child that made it to university, and that was an amazing time. That was an interesting time for me, and I was in the adult world, and as much as we had a lot of money flowing through our home and our life and our business, Mum and Dad's business, I was working 3 jobs at a part-time level, just learning the ethos of, I guess, what it takes to make a living, while I was doing my university studies. And I sort of reflect on that, and it just sort of dawned on me as I just shared that with you is, here I am talking about my mum and dad only knowing one thing, and that's working harder, and here I am working 3 jobs when I didn't really need to work any. So quite interesting. But over the next 4 years, I went to university and graduated and succeeded. And then when I went overseas for a 3-month holiday into Europe with a handful of friends, and didn't come back home for 18 months. I came back home to a situation in the early 1990s where Mum and Dad had almost lost everything, and we were almost at the point where we had to mortgage our home, the home that we grew up in, as a last, I guess, step to salvage, which was a failing ship called their business. So to put some scope around that, Mum and Dad were they were employing about 100 odd people. They had 100 odd people on their team in the late 1980s, and by 1991 that had gone down to 4 people. So that just gives you a bit of perspective on what can happen in the space of 2 to 3 years when there hasn't been some deep-seated planning or some considered strategic and tactical approaches to forecasting, I guess, challenges in business. I get back for my sister's engagement, and it was Christmas 1991, and realised the degree of challenge that Mum and Dad were in, and the right thing for me to do was to step in and help, and not so much because I knew what needed to happen, and not so much that I was really good at getting great exam scores and ultimately got a degree that gave me a little bit of leverage to have read a few more books than perhaps Mum and Dad, but I needed to step in on an emotional level, on a supportive level, and regardless of how we grew up, we were a very tight-knit family. So by stepping in 1992 to, I guess, sort of trying to rest and or create something out of nothing, something that was really broken, one of the first things I needed to do was appoint someone that I considered back then was a mentor, someone that just had gone down the beaten track of growing businesses, and in my eyes and in my views was someone that I can look up to or have as a sounding board to the decisions that needed to be made. And just going back a little while, so I shared the story about the BMW in 1986. So several years later, we had to sell that car to put food on the table so that we can get through. There was plenty of advice to my parents suggesting that they should fold and liquidate and just throw the towel in and start again. But that would have meant that there were plenty of business owners that supported Mum and Dad as in the supply chain, even team members that were still there that would have got, would have got hurt in that decision. So we decided against that. So for the next 4 years and for the next 10 years in total, I was just committed to getting Mum and Dad back to a place where they had some choice again. I turned up to that business, and it took 10 years to turn it around eventually, and we sold it in the early 2000s. But it took me 10 years to get Mum and Dad back to a place where there was some choice. There was a lot of personal sacrifice in that journey. And I turned up to that business every day, hating every single moment. Now, looking back at that, I think I just convinced myself that I hated the business. And it was an emotional sort of anchor for me. It was easy for me to say, I don't want to be here. I'm only here because I've got to help you guys. And it just sort of gave me a bit of a buffer and a bit of, I guess, what I called moat and castle space between putting 100% in and occasionally not putting 100% in. But in fairness, we turned that business around over 10 years and we became a benchmark business in Australia, based out of Melbourne, where we re-employed 70 people in a very tight-knit, structured organisational chart, who's doing what by when. I'm going to be sharing a bit of this, some of these frameworks that I learnt very early in the piece from my mentor, Basil, who taught me, 50% of something successful is way better than 100% of something that's not. He also taught me, the right people in the right places, being really clear about their responsibilities, getting paid the right money will always contribute to the right result. So some fundamental grounding points in business and mindset as to what were the important things if you were going to regrow a business or recommence and ultimately strategize and be tactful as to growing something. What he really taught me was working harder was not the game. I'm not even going to say working smarter was what he taught me. It was just opening the mind to a point called leverage. And I know since those moments in the early days, in the dark days, in the early 1990s, in my first journey, my real journey in business ownership, learning the power of leverage and leveraging people. Together we can do so much more versus I'm going to work harder today and you guys just watch me. The power of leveraging, as you get better at managing money, what money as a tool can do for you. They say money is the root of evil. No, the love of money is the root of evil. What money can do as a tool as you get to understand it and utilize it to yours and those that you care for, not only your immediate family, but your immediate team. What it can do as a tool is unbelievable. So the journey over 10 years provided for me so many fundamental baseline learnings that till today, in working with over 300, 500 clients throughout the world, in teaching them how to grow their business, how to take their business to the first $1 million, to the second, to the fifth, to the 20th, to the 50th $1 million in annual revenue, to growing from one person on the team to 50 people on the team. Some of the fundamentals that I learnt in real time and in real moments, for which there were plenty of times when I was scratching my head, just asking myself, how does this work? But trusting the process and following the process. I still stay true to many of that learning of that period, and I've got to God rest his soul. He did such a great job in just imparting the wisdom and the knowledge, and it was up to me to take it in. It was up to me to open my mind whether I was okay to take the feedback and/or the new learning. So, I guess having gone through that journey and continue to reflect on that journey. Being a father to two boys and ultimately just being a role model, not by working harder, but just being curious in conversation, asking them to open their mind to what's possible for them. Not being so concerned about outcomes and goals and results, but being really focused on what is the standard. What is the standard? Has to be a way of thinking. What is the outcome that you are striving for is a destination, but the standard that you continue elevating to is what ultimately is the reputation that you build. So for many of us in business, no different to my first journey in business, and mum and dad were considered rocks in that very, very, very difficult and, in fairness, self-esteem sapping days. There are plenty of times when we still talk about those moments where we just, we would run out of petrol in the middle of the road and we would need to walk home. And, Thursday payroll was turning up and we just didn't know how we were going to do it. But somehow, miraculously, we would find the last $500 or the last $1,000 and we would make it happen. And it's quite interesting how desperation became strategy. And strategy was being desperate in the first hour, not at the 11th hour. And again, fundamentals that I bring into everything I do in my life today and what we share and impart for those that are willing to hear as to how they need to progress their opportunity. So when you get there, you never feel like you should be there. It's always a bit of, again, where's the next standard? Where's the next level? And at some point, you trust in people to be part of that journey so that the next level is not just up to you, it's up to all of us. So these are fundamental learnings that by the end of my 10-year tenure in a business that I truly believed at that stage of my life I hated, end up being the real reason why I continue to be successful and be relevant and very influential for those that trust in me to be a considered leader or an influencer in their space. So there is nothing challenging about business. There is nothing difficult about business. There is no such thing as a bad business. I've travelled the world speaking on this topic. I've written 2 books on this, which I'll share in a moment. There is nothing in the world such as a bad business. It's just the way we open our mind as to the way we think and the way we make decisions. That's where the challenge of, do you have something that's moving in the right direction at the rate that it should versus it's not moving in the right direction and it's very, very, very cumbersome. The only difference there is the way you make decisions. So by the end of 10 years, 2002, we sold that business. And Mum and Dad were at a position where they weren't exactly where they were 10 years prior to that or 12 years prior to that. They were in a position where they had now choice. Now they live 9 months of the year. They're in their early 70s in terms of age. They live 9 months of the year on the Greek islands in their birthplace, and they come back for 3 months every year to Melbourne, Australia, disrupt the grandchildren a bit, give us a bit of a headache, and go back again. So, I'm really pleased for them, and I owe a lot to them because I guess I think about sliding doors. What if that turning point didn't occur? Where would my life have gone, and what may have been my influence in that 520-week period between 1992 and 2002, what may have occurred there if I didn't come back to realise how bad things were back at home? Who knows? I've got no idea. I feel I would have been successful because I had that, that drive and that focus of success and standard and level. But I owe a lot to that period, as do thousands of people that I've shared the story with, and as a viral for those that share the sharing, and my role, my focus, I guess, my calling, if you call it that, is to continue to be sharing the journey. Now, let's make no mistakes. This is not about being cute and cuddly and nurturing, and business, as much as it doesn't need to be hard, is a brutal intellectual sport, for which brutal truth are some of the foundation pieces of just getting to the point to realise, don't worry about the solutions, be really good at figuring out what is the problem. As you get good at that, you start to realise what could be the problem. What are the icebergs? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges that are coming? Now, it takes a little bit of experience and framework and ultimately practice to get to a point where what you used to take care of at the 11th hour gets taken care of at the first hour. And that's about being strategic. And strategic, in my opinion, is an overused word right now. In my opinion, you just need to be tactical. You need to understand the how, not just the what. So I love what I do. I so enjoy watching the success that's imparted on those that just go and do what they said they would do and do it a little bit better every time. I love the fact that some of our clients also have some learnings, otherwise disguised as failures, and bounce back from that because, unless you have one of those, you don't realise where is the gap or where is the fix or where is the innovation. And, how boring would it be if everything you did was just success, success, success? Now, I'm not influencing that you should go and fail, but I'm influencing having a go. I believe that going to the cliff's edge and making a really cool decision, not because you're a kamikaze pilot, but because you have an opportunity to think about being at the cliff's edge and making a decision. You are choosing to fly. However, if for whatever reason it just doesn't go to plan, there is a safety net called a plan B. So I'm okay for people to go to a cliff's edge and say, okay, how far can I go? How far am I prepared to back myself with the courage that it takes to build, grow, nurture, and continue to grow, build, and nurture a business. Because a business never stops. This is our adult life. Whether you want to get to a destination or not, that might be the destination that says you get out of your business way and let the business continue. Every one of us should be so focused on building a legacy business. At some point, your business might be sold to a future owner that wants to take it to another level. At some business, your business might grow to a level where people, human beings that you have imparted leadership and direction and influence, and they are enrolled in the journey going somewhere for which at some point your destination says step aside while someone else steps up to take it to the next level. Why shouldn't that be your opportunity? Why should that not be their opportunity? Everything we do in business is about relationships. I spoke about leverage earlier in this message, but it's relationships that ultimately are the key point of leverage. It's relationships internal in the business, such as your immediate team, and how we nurture and grow as they also put positive pressure back on us to keep on stepping up and moving forward. All things being equal, our team want to belong to something going somewhere. All things being equal, our team need to, as often as you can, for all the right reason, catch them doing something good. Let them know that they're doing good. And be okay to be honest with them when something needs a correction. It's the way we use our words that are critical to our success, and you do not need to be a wordsmith, but you just need to think before you speak. It is so important that we keep on building relationships on the internal, because ultimately they are the influence of the product or service that gets delivered on the external. Internal relationships are also our suppliers. The type of suppliers that you are engaging in, the vendors that you are engaging in. If you are building a business that's going up a level, the next standard and the next standard after that, the only way you can continue to grow that standard and level, results, outcomes, revenue, profit, is to continuously be building a platform for which people are going to be better than you at some point. Understanding that people need to bring their heart and mind to their role and responsibility versus just their arms and legs is a critical point of advancement. Understanding and backing yourself if, let's just say, your team right now is not what you want it to be, or is not performing in the sort of way you want it to be performing. First things first, you must look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I the best leader for my business right now? And if the answer is, I don't think so, or maybe not, what you need to do is reach out and say, okay, how can I seek help? And it's not so much help getting beaten up, being told you've got a bald spot. It's about help to open up the mind to get some feedback from a trusted insider that cares about you. As long as you know where you're going, helping and reaching out for assistance to give you feedback on the good things and the not so good things to help you become a better leader so that you can help them become better leaders is a critical point of success. So in our world, we talk about 7 steps and 4 touches. 7 steps, 4 touches. It's a framework for building relationships. 7 steps and 4 touches is a framework. It's not an exact science. When we talk about 7 steps and 4 touches, whether it's internal or external relationships, it is so important to ensure that there is communication and relational activities going on. With your internal team, you need to ensure that there's a constant communication rhythm. There are humans doing business internally in the business across function areas, even if it's just 2 of you. Just wear a different hat every time you're having a meeting. Finance hat, sales hat. Operations hat, admin hat. Doesn't make a difference. Get practice of what's coming for you and what you deserve. So 7 steps is constantly have a framework where there are multiple steps that are going on. In other words, humans love doing business with humans. 4 of those steps need to be human touches, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a face-to-face meeting, whether it's a follow-up, whether it's an action plan that someone is indicating now what has happened versus what's going to happen, which is a reflection on the plan and where we're at and where we're going. That still needs a human element, a human voice, a human touch that's needed. So learning how to be better at relational activities is going to serve you for life. And relational activities lead to a growth in reputation. Why? Because you are actually showing a culture of care. You are showing a culture of whatever it takes. You are proving by virtue of turning up when you said you would, hence why there's 7 steps. Because if you're congruent to a promise by being where you said you would, or delivering a conversation as you said you would, or giving people feedback as you said you would, 2 minutes before you promised, you now have clients for life. You are building a team for life. When it comes to business, our people, our relationships, they're either plus ones or minus ones. There's no other scorecard when it comes to relationships. It is so important to allow people to be promotable in terms of relationships. What I mean by promotable, you are getting deep-seated. You are becoming deeper in your relevance as they become in yours. And it's about loyalty and trust. One of the biggest barriers to business growth and business success is the lack of trust. And I'm not talking about trust someone's going to steal $2 from you or $1,000 from you. I'm just talking about the trust of the leadership team, the business owner, imparting the trust in other people to do the hardest or the best or the next type of work for them. So by developing a mindset of let them win, let them be looping, let them be consistent, let them be relational, you are building a business backed by people who are delivering a service and product that are relational. High tech, high touch. There's also aspects in the world we live in, which is technology, that can just send an email and or a response or a report very quickly, very efficiently. We have no issue with that. Think about it. 4 touches are human. 3 touches in this framework are automation, leverage, technology. So we're not wanting you to go back to the old ages, but we definitely want you to be more relational. So over 30 years in business, over many, many industries, having coached and worked with more than 500 businesses, there is no better way to build the standard of a business than on the back of relational activity. It is our responsibility to keep on building a tribe, a membership, a posse, internal and external, of people that have high care factor. Empathy at a level where we don't lose sight of having commercial acumen, but being really committed to delivering outcomes and delivery of a promise, and 2 minutes before we had suggested. So the importance of relationships can never be undermined when it comes to growing a business. And you know, if I knew back then in building my parents' business, which was my first journey in the real life of, you know, hey, trying to make something work. One of the things I got to understand, the things that, you know, I could only read about when I was doing my studies, I guess, you know, people having freedom, having quality of life, having teams that were functioning better than they would, understanding that being okay to receive feedback, being okay to trust yourself to go to a new market and or step up the type of clients you want to be serving, or expanding the type of, I guess, products and services you want to be delivering, going into overseas global markets. I got to understand that these are things that most businesses want, or it could be someone else's dream, until I realized this could be my dream. This could be my outcome. This could be something that I lead. And I trusted the process of just opening up the mind to understand that I can build a team that was going to be better than me. I could go out to other markets and expand our opportunity and our relevance. I could have an opportunity to take 4 weeks off without coming back to a car park. Understanding that there was more money at the end of the month once all the expenses had gone out, after I learned how to manage money better. Understanding the key numbers and the ratios, but also the emotional drivers. how to control the ups and downs by getting better at being a better decision maker ahead of time. Remember, forget about the 11th hour rush for making the biggest and most reactive decisions. How do we make the biggest decisions in the first hour was a transition and a journey, as I shared earlier in my message. And I look forward to, again, so many people are out there just working like mum and dad did, just hard. And the next version is harder. And they miss out on having dinner with their children every night at 6 o'clock. Why? They miss out on little Johnny's football match or little Melissa's basketball match on the weekend. Why is that? Now, there are times and industries where you do need to put those hours in. But the harmony of that is there should be other times in the week where you don't need to be there. Being in business, anything more than 60, 70, 80 hours is something that you have resided to and made a decision on. The reason that you have burnout and no time to do anything else is because you made that decision, and now is the time to think about how do you slowly but surely transition that decision. How do you slowly but surely peg back your 12, 14-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week, to maybe 11 hours and 6.5 days a week? Do you understand what I mean? The ability to say, I haven't got money to invest in personal development or business strategy. Well, if you don't have the money, there is no such thing as this is the money that should be spent. This is the money that should be invested. Having a team that's not performing at the level that you want it to or need it to or the business deserves it to, including you being the business owner, there's no such thing as there's no way out of this. It's you putting your hand up to say, hey, I am curious. Can you help? I am curious. Can we have a chat? So over the next 7 days or so, I want to hear how you are embarking on improving your relational activity, how you are embarking on, let's say, at least 4 touches with someone that you're making a commitment to turn up and be a different version of you. A more advanced version of you. Take a standard to a whole new level. I want to understand from you, and please, we take questions, feedback. My team are here, we're ready. Help me understand what it is that we can help you with, not because we need your money right now, but because we are devoted and committed to helping you. Ultimately, in the next session, I'm going to be talking about the critical 5. What are the critical 5 components to ensure you are attracting as a business, not you as an individual, the clients that you deserve, the clients that are going to stay with you for life. The critical 5 steps to building a business that has clients for life. I'm Stefan Kazakis. I'm really excited to be sharing this with you. I'm so excited to be given the opportunity to have shared my story. And it's a story. I'm looking forward to hearing yours. Thank you so much.